Hello, my name's Kim. I am a few days away from finishing at my current job and I'll be starting a new job in a few weeks. But in between that, I have a bit of time off and I'm also going on holiday. So I thought I would take this opportunity to do a kind of week and a bit in the life slash reading what I want because I can sort of vlog. I say I'm reading what I can because I want. I pretty much already know everything I'm planning to read for this. Unintentionally, it just so happened that I've come into contact with a few new books that I'd be interested in reading, and there's a new release that I'm looking forward to as well that I realised it's coming out towards the end of my little bit of time off. So I thought I would just film and see what it is that I get up to. I have 2 half days of work left, and then I have a couple of other things planned. I'm getting my car serviced, how thrilling. I'm going to get coffee with a friend, and then as I said, I'm going on holiday. I'm going to Italy, to Rome. And so I was debating on whether or not to finish this before then, but Among the Burning Flowers by Samantha Shannon comes out on the 11th, which is the day I'm due to go away. And normally physical copies of books from Waterstones come in just before the release date. So I'm hoping that it'll come in because I'm pushing aside all reading plans. That is my priority. I will be on the plane in Rome reading that book. So I think I might finish this after I come back. So you might also see a bit of Rome. We'll see. First things first though is what I'm currently reading because I started it last night, and that's Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. I'm sure this probably needs very little introduction. There is a lady named Halla. She is in a very unfortunate situation where she has been left a lot of money by her dead husband's great uncle, who has recently passed away, and her dead husband's family are kind of fiends and trying to get all this money and property because it's all been left to her. And she is deciding that really the only way out of this is to die, and so she attempts to stab herself with a sword, but this sword is actually a man and there is a lot of mystery around it. His name's Sarkis. He is just this person who has been put within this blade and has been wielded by different owners over the years, and I am 25% of the way through, just over 100 pages, and I'm liking it so far. I had a feeling that I would. My friends have been pestering me to read this. They really like this, and it is also my kind of vibe because even though I'm not like a romance reader, having this kind of bond where, you know, he is basically bound to her because she is the wielder of the sword. She pulled him from the sword. That kind of like unescapable relationship is a kind of a favourite trope of mine, the same kind of thing as like being bonded or whatever. I do really enjoy that trope and the way it's written, and I do enjoy T. Kingfisher's writing as well. I've had like an up and down mix with all of the books of hers I've read, but I feel like this one is kind of one that I really expect to enjoy. So I am going to read a little bit more of this today. Probably, well, it's a bit chunkier than I thought it was. It's over 400 pages. I'm gonna make the most of the free time that I have because I'm only doing half days this week that I'm in, and read a little bit more, but I'm also gonna, you know, chill, play Stardew Valley. I'll be surprised? No. And then I will take you through when I'm finished what other books I have tentatively in mind for reading in this video. I finished Sword Heart. This was a really easy read. T. Kingfisher tends to be an easy read. I gave it 4 stars. I recommend it if you haven't already read it, which I'm sure most people have. It's a low stakes fantasy. Like, there are stakes. The opening literally begins with Halla, and I quote, just inherited a great deal of money and therefore spent the evening trying to figure out how to kill herself. Like, there are stakes. There is like family shenanigans going on, but it's very clear that like there's going to be a happy ending, and that these stakes, while they kind of maybe seem intense, they're not like maybe world-shattering ending, gods destroying stakes. They are Halla's trying to get her inheritance, and she's going to go about it and have some shenanigans on the way, and she's going to have family members who are trying to cause havoc in the way, and she's going to fall in love with a man in a sword, and there's going to be a really cool lawyer and this badger guy, and like things are going to go well. Like I said, I do recommend it. I kind of thought that maybe there was a little bit long. Like, I got 300 and something pages in and things were starting to resolve and there were still 100 pages left, and I was like, well, what is going on here? But honestly, like, it was still really enjoyable to read. It's still really easy to read, even though there was still another 100 pages. I read it really quickly, so you know, you can't really complain in that sense. It has made me eager to start Paladin's Grace, because I know it's set in the same world. My friend has given me the lowdown on the fact that I should read The Clockwork Boys first though, so I am planning to do that. I might actually now add that to the books that I was going to read in this video. I wasn't originally planning on it because I was just going to go straight to Paladin's Grace. I didn't realise that also gave you some more wider context. So potentially that's coming up, but I'm not going to read it just yet because I don't want to. I'm not the sort of person who can dive straight into a sequel, or like a related thing. I need like a bit of a break in between to kind of like give my brain a moment to relax. Generally I kind of go a few books in between, so maybe you'll see that in here, because I think the first book in the Clockwork Boys series is only just under 300 pages, so I should get through that fairly quickly, so look out for that. Yeah, I recommend. In the meantime, the next book that I'm planning on reading is, one moment please, I feel like I should do a drum roll. It's Just Love. I used to be a Critical Role watcher. Not recently. I haven't watched Critical Role properly in quite a while. I have kind of like semi kept up with what's going on. They have a new season coming out fairly soon, and I'm definitely gonna have a little bit of a watch and see what it's like as they're starting to build it up. But I started watching Critical Role when the first campaign was on, and then I kind of dropped off partway through the second campaign, but it was a big thing in my life for quite a while. It's what got me into D&D. I met and made and forged really strong friendships with my current friendship group because of D&D, which again I can thank for Critical Role. And I spent many a days in my third year of uni watching the live streams with my friends, and just, you know, having a good old time. And so I was kind of thinking about picking this up because I think it's really cool that they've managed to grow enough that they've managed to get a book published from a little throwaway line that happened. And I actually have heard really good things about it. A friend of mine's partner has read it fairly recently and said that she absolutely flew through it. And then I've seen other people talk about it and kind of rate it fairly highly. I know this author did the Hurricane Wars, I believe, and I saw mixed things about that, which is part of the reason why I wasn't initially planning on picking this up. But I heard good things and I was like, oh, okay, like, I mean, we have this conversation plenty of times. Oh, that actually reminds me, not to go back to Sword Art, but I had the conversation with my friends about what I enjoy about Tea Kingfisher is that these books have romance, but they're not like romance, which I know defeats the point of me reading this, but I promise this has a point. There is a lot of yearning and a lot of slow burn and build to Tea Kingfisher's romance in her books, which is why it is fun to read, because it's not a lusty situation. And it's why sometimes I think I struggle with romantasy. Even though there are books that have romance that I enjoy, generally it tends to be that romance is a secondary plot to whatever's going on. And romance is like a big part of this, but at the same time it's not. Like, the biggest part is the fact that they have to figure out how to get Hella's inheritance and stop her family from going absolutely bonkers at her. Which again defeats the point of me reading like a romantasy. But I've heard good things. I am curious about how it's going to work. Like, this feels a little bit more like a fantasy. I mean, it is a fantasy romance. I was going to say a fantasy that has romance. That's fantasy romance. But it's not like, it doesn't really feel the same way as other ones that immediately come to mind. Like, I don't know why the first thing that comes to my head is like Faebound and also A Dark and Draining Tide, which are ones that I pick up because I tend to pick up queer romantasy if I'm going to pick it up. Or even the one I read last month, When the Tides Held the Moon, where romance is such a massive part of it and there are other really high stakes things going on. But I feel like because the romance is the plot, the stakes of the things that are going on are not necessarily that great. And, you know, I had other problems with, well, most of those books. Less problems with The Tides Held the Moon, but I had more problems with Faebound and A Dark and Draining Tide. Whereas this feels more like it's romance, fantasy romance, if that makes sense. Like, the plot is that they meet and Oscar has to kind of be her bodyguard, and so it feels less like there are super high stakes things happening, which is going to cause me issue because then the high stakes things aren't what I'm more invested in, are not going well because the romance is taking over. Like, it seems different. Did any of that make sense? No, I wasn't expecting to ramble on for as long as I had. Anyway, the point is I'm kind of intrigued and invested, and I also think that this is a really nice cover, but I'm also obsessed with the underflap. This was also part of the reason where I was like, I'm not buying this unless my cover has the real cover underneath, because again, as someone who used to be really invested in Critical Role, I found that that's really cool. And also when you look at it, all the little acknowledgements of, like, not the acknowledgements, the the little authors bits are all by Critical Role characters, which I'm kind of obsessed with, because it just feels pretty cool. Anyway, I'm off to go and see if I'm off to go and see if I can get my car key fixed. Thrilling, riveting story. I've got it in my pocket somewhere. But there's a hole in the key, because the key has fallen out. It wasn't my fault, it was someone else's fault. So I'm off to go and see if I can get fixed, because I'm finished work for the day now, and then I'm going to start reading Tusk Love, and you'll see me shortly. And I'm also going to buy some cinnamon buns, because I had some really nice ones that I bought from Tesco yesterday, and I've already finished it, so I'm going to buy some more, because why not? I've got free will and adult money. Tusk Love is finished. It is also a 4-star. We are on a roll here with 4 stars. I like this more than I expected to. We start off in the kind of, you know, typical, they meet, Oscar is protecting her, and fairly quickly they kind of get into this grumpy sunshine sort of relationship. Because it's dual POV, we can see that Oscar kind of falls first. He really quickly is like, oh, you know, I shouldn't be acting this way, but I have feelings for her. And Guinevere is kind of going through the kind of feelings that she has about the fact that she is supposed to be being married off to someone else, and you know what this kind of means for her. And between the two of them, the majority of the book is them travelling to the end destination and them getting there. There are kind of different sorts of various hijinks along the way. I really appreciate the fact that there was a goblin clan who were delightful. As someone who's currently playing a goblin, evidenced by my goblin little girl, yeah, I really appreciated that, because obviously orcs and goblins tend to be painted as evil characters. There obviously are potential racial connotations as well with those characters, that have then kind of added to those stereotypes. So I really appreciate that we have obviously a half orc as one of the main characters. We have Goblin Clan, who are really helpful and really just great characters as well. I think their relationship could feel a little bit stereotypical at times. They're obviously kind of a bit infatuated with each other, and they spend, thought their first almost kiss was literally 60 pages in, but the book is only 260 something pages, so things have to kind of move at a pace. I think ultimately it was well written. I also liked the very few Critical Role references. You absolutely don't need to know anything about Critical Role to read this, but there are 2 kind of references. The first one being the fact that in the show that the quote is like, oh, Oscar, and that is said a few times in here. And the second being the Opal of the Ocean / in the Critical Role show, the Ruby of the Sea, who is mentioned. And so those are the only 2 overt ones that I can think that were in there. Obviously there's other references considering it's set in the same world, but yeah, I did enjoy this one. I'm glad to have read it. I next am thinking about picking up Space Brooms by A.G. Rodriguez. This one is just one that I saw and thought looked cool. It's about this guy who ends up, who's like a cleaner, yeah, a janitor, which is called a space broom, and he ends up finding some specific, like, what's the word? I come on, controversial, that's not the word. Confidential, it literally says it here, information, and then he kind of ends up on the run. I definitely am not going to finish this in one day. I managed to finish this yesterday, but because if there's a book under 300 pages, I have quite a bit of the day to read it. I'm kind of like, this is a challenge, I can finish this. But I got home from work a bit late today because it was my last day today, so I don't envision that I'm going to finish this. I want to at least start it though. The text seems like quite big, so hopefully I'll be able to make good headway with this. And then, 1 moment please. And then, actually I've decided that I got this one because I think I preferred this cover, but it's like the spread edges aren't actually that great. And it's like the US edition, so the paper is like super white, and I never really noticed that compared to like UK printed books. It's kind of more of like a cream. Because even this one, I would say it's not white, whereas the pages in this one are like blindingly white. Anyway, I'm also going to get to this one at some point in the next few days. I'm officially done with work, So I am having a reset day. My room's a mess. Like, it's awful. I'm the sort of person who tidies up and then it just builds up again, and I'm like, oh, I can't be in this messiness because it stresses me out. But then I need to like a day to like deep clean, but like, you know, tidy things out. So today I'm going to do a bit of that. I'm not going on holiday until, well, next week. This time next week I'll be in Rome, or like almost on the plane. So I am going to kind of start not packing my bag, but like just, there's no point in me putting the clothes in my wardrobe that are then going to go in my case, so I might as well put them in my case and kind of just have them out the way. Anyway, major distraction. All of that preamble is leading into this, in which I tell you that I'm DNFing Space Brooms. I'm a bit sad about it because I actually was gonna wait to get this from the library, because I just thought, well, why not? It came up on the library holds list. I don't know if I'd put in an actual hold yet, but then it ended up being in Waterstones. Spotted it, was like, oh my god, like, I think the cover's really cool. I'd be interested in picking it up. I haven't heard much about it, you know, that's always a risk. And so I ended up buying it instead. I unfortunately fall prey to pretty books. What can I say? I'm DNFing it. I got 4 chapters in, 5 chapters in, which is about 50 pages, 46 pages, sorry. I don't think it's that well written, and there's a lot of like over description. So like the first section, there's kind of like a bit of like a dream sequence, which you can see because of the way that it changes, and you can tell it's a dream sequence, but it's not really clear that it's a dream sequence, if that makes sense, or like a daydream, I should say. And then it's talking about, there's one bit where it's talking about him getting ready, and it's like, oh, I have to find it to see if I can explain it. So he's talking about how about the showers and stuff. He's like, I miss regular showers with steaming hot water I could gargle and harsh soaps and shampoos that would sting my eyes. After toweling off and brushing my teeth, I quickly dressed in my navy blue pants, orange t-shirt and favourite hoodie, stopping Annie to glance in the mirror. My scruffy cheeks and chin ensured a lecture from Phallus about proper hygiene and grooming for an employee of Astrosil Services, but I was too tired to care. Like, description wise, it's just a bit overly descriptive. I know maybe that sounds silly, but it just felt like everything was, it's very much a show not tell, where like everything is being described, when it's like not everything does need to be described. Like, I didn't also need to know he was brushing his teeth, like, but maybe that's just me being piggy. Also at the very end, I was already feeling a bit about the writing, and because I just think the character just kind of felt a bit like his spoilers, not major spoilers, minor spoilers, his boss is a bit of a weirdo, and is like just like a rubbish boss, but he essentially just implies at the end of like the last chapter that I read that actually his boss is interested in him, and it was quite, what's the word I'm looking for, leery, and quite like, obviously his boss has been inappropriate, and then it kind of just like switches on to something else, and I was just like, nah, I don't want to read that. From the comments, I had a look on Goodreads at some of the other commentary, and it seems like that kind of thing continues throughout. Like, there is a couple of, at one stage earlier on, he walks into his boss's office, and his boss was watching alien porn, and then is like, doesn't really make an effort to hide the fact that he was watching it, and I was like, no, like, I gave it not even 50 pages, but I'm not in the mood to be reading that. So Space Brooms, gone. Which means that I'll be reading Catabasis, however you want to say the title, sooner than I expected. I purposely waited until I was off work because I feel like this is actually going to be my first proper Aura-Quang book. I have Babel, as we all know, it's on my 25 and 2025. I could be reading this right now, but I don't want to. I did read a little bit of the Poppy War years and years and years ago, but I just never ended up actually, like, I just kind of tasted the first few chapters, and then I never actually ended up properly reading the book. But because this one is quite an academic book, I knew that I kind of wanted to sit down and have like a day. Like, I would have started it on a weekend. I like starting big books on a weekend because then I can dedicate a bit more time to reading instead of like being in the evening after work, and I've got plenty of time, but it feels like I have less time, you know, by the time you've eaten dinner and kind of try to unwind for the day, I've got less time to sit down and read and focus. Whereas on a day like today, I'm obviously tidying up, but after that I can pretty much dedicate as much time as I want to reading the book, so I can make a real effort to kind of get in, or at least, you know, and understand everything that's happening, rather than like stop starting in the evenings. So I'm going to give it a try and start it. I've seen kind of mixed things about it. In theory, it sounds like it'll be a book that I like. I do love a bit of academia in books, like specifically the kind of like post, at this point, like the PhD era, because that is what I would be doing if I was still in academia at this point. Like that's the kind of like that level of academia. I'm not really interested in reading about kind of like uni kind of college students that much. It's more about like postgraduate study because that is my era. Not that I'm doing postgraduate study. I think I am rambling too much. The point is that it sounds like it should be something that I like, which is why I went out of my way to pre-order it, because I wouldn't have otherwise. I literally have not read Babel. It's been literal years. I own a hardcover copy that I bought when it was released, and I swear that was released in like 2021 or something like that, maybe 2022. I do physically have it back. Where I put it though, I don't know, because my sister had it. Oh, it's there. It's looking right at me. It's over there. I do have it. So really I should read that at some point this year. But that's not what this video is for. This video is to talk about Catabasis. So I'll be reading that. Starting it today after I do a little bit of tidying up and putting some stuff away. And that is the end of my ramble. Yeah. I'll update you later. I was very productive yesterday. I took a nap. I did add books to my bookshelves, which really, I need to stop buying books. However, how am I supposed to stop buying books? Like, I don't buy as many books as I used to, but still, I don't have the space. So we're manifesting. End of this year, early next year, I'm moving out. I get a massive bookshelf, and then I have no problem because these are like backed up, but at least like there are like 2 rows of backed up. Anyway, the point is that I did make a start on Catabasis. I got 116 pages in. We have our 2 main characters. We've got Alice and we also have Peter. And Alice is trying to bring back their professor from hell. She's very kind of selfish in a way. It is driven by the fact that she doesn't think that she will be able to get a good job without his recommendation because he's one of the top in his field. But it's very clear that he's also not really a good person, and his death, she's kind of implicated in his death as well. Not that other people know that, but she knows that. And so it's up to her to kind of go down to hell and to figure out how to get him back so that she can get her recommendation and make her way in the world when she finishes her PhD. She is tagged along by Peter. They clearly have some kind of history together. I don't think at this point it feels like it's romantic history, but they maybe were friends at one point and then things kind of fell apart. There's a lot of rivalry between them as well. And Peter has basically said, well, I also had the same idea. Also, you're not going to hell alone, so I'm coming with you. And I do appreciate that it really just dives in straight away. Like, we skip straight into them going to hell by the end of the first chapter. They have done their 2 months of research and they're going to hell. Because obviously the build up to that could obviously have taken a while. So we really do dive straight in to getting into hell. And there has obviously been a lot of talk online about this one being quite academic and all of this sort of stuff. And yes, in a way, like, they are talking a lot about a lot of theories and stuff like that because their basis for understanding hell is all of the people in history who have discussed hell in some way. So, and taking that as literal trips to hell. So, oh my god, I forgot his name. Who's the guy whose wife, Orpheus. Yes. I was going to say Odysseus. I don't know where that came from. I knew it was an O. And like Dante's Inferno, and using that as like accurate, or accurate as it can be, accounts of what it will be like in their experience of hell. So in a sense, yes, but I don't really think that you do need to be familiar with those to have an understanding of what they're talking about, because a lot of the academicness is them kind of bantering back and forth and being like, well, I think it's this because I've read this, and the other one's like, well, I've read this. And like, yes, it kind of can go over your head a little bit because they're talking about these theories of things, but I also don't think that you're necessarily meant to understand that, because you don't know about, I don't know, something about like hyperspace or whatever they were discussing, but it's just them, I'm just going to put this down now, it's quite heavy, it's just them discussing back and forth and them having this kind of banter of different academic viewpoints and stuff like that. So at this point I wouldn't really say it's super academic. I'm someone who studied history, and not a lot of history that is covered in this, but there was like one or two things where I was like, oh, I know that. There was also a moment that really did make me laugh, which I wasn't expecting, but there is the first kind of, the kind of setup of hell is obviously kind of the different sins, and so the first one that they encounter is pride, and there is this guy who's going around talking about the kind of sins that people have had in the different areas, and one of them is, he says that this guy says he used to work at Oxford, but really he worked for Oxford Brookes, and unless you're in the UK, that is like a really specific reference. As someone who literally works in the higher education sector and who is just left a university which definitely has a lot of stigma around it for not being one of the Russell Group universities, which is a whole kind of like other thing that you wouldn't know unless you're in the UK kind of education system. The stigma around specific universities and their reputations, the similar as it is across the world, but also obviously in the UK, is real. And there is definitely that thing where like there is this Oxford Brookes sort of thing, and so that I wasn't expecting that, and it did make me laugh a little bit. One of the discussions I've seen also floating about online, which I think is probably a fairly valid criticism, is that for Aurora Kong, she's obviously not British, but she's spent a lot of time in the UK studying at Oxford and Cambridge, but class is a massive part of the disparity between different groups of people in the UK. Class is like a massive thing, and so I'm kind of waiting to, I guess, to see how that kind of plays out. We have at the moment Alice being kind of ignored because she's a woman. This is set in like the 1960s, so even in hell there is a guy who's basically just not paying attention to her and paying attention to Peter, because he clearly doesn't expect her to have knowledge of what they're talking about. So there is that kind of like misogyny there, and I can also expect there'll obviously be levels of racism there, because I know that's covered in Babel as well, and kind of the racism that you get in specifically higher education. So I am interested to see how that plays out a little bit. I did think that comment itself was a little bit of an insight into, you know, British class and kind of Oxford versus Oxford Brookes and the different universities in the UK and everything like that. That's me going on a tangent though. That was just something I wanted to point out because it did make me giggle a little bit, because I just took me by surprise, and yeah, that is a real comment. Like, if you would know, if you're a UK university student, like I don't know what the US comparison is, but like that is definitely a real thing that I've heard before. So yeah, I'm hoping to get through a little bit more today. It is like pretty big. If I hadn't had a nap, I probably would have read a bit more. But I kind of want to make it at least maybe like 2/3 of the way through today, and hopefully try and finish it tomorrow. I'm not having any issue with getting through it though at the moment. I feel like it is fairly like readable in terms of like the relationship between Alice and Peter. They clearly have a bit of back and forth. They're moving because they both have like a mission to get their professor. So, and there's obviously things that are kind of a threat to them in hell. So they're not just kind of sitting around twiddling their fingers. They did like sleep in hell, which led to a kind of like, you know, a bit too close situation where they both kind of got flustered, which I felt was a bit like cheesy, but it's like I'm not having any issues with reading it so far, which I do think I had a bit of a preconceived notion from all of the academia kind of talk that was going on around it, but I'm not having any problems, so I'm liking it so far. We'll see how it goes, and then hopefully now that I finally will have taken steps to read this, I think reading Babel will be less scary for me. I think that the hype around it, I'm the sort of person where if it gets too hyped up, I'm probably not, I'm like,
I'm not reading it. Like, not even from a point of like, I don't want to read it. It's just like there is too much going on around it, and so it can be a bit off-putting. But I picked up Babel before when it came out, so it was already kind of like big at the time, but it's obviously blown up into something so massive since. Loads of people love it. Most people in my life around me have read it, and I still haven't read it. And I think I've kind of like talked myself out of reading it because I'm almost a bit afraid at this point. But I'm hoping that getting through Catabasis is going to be like a gateway into that. And so hopefully before the end of this year I'll read it, and then at least I'll tick off something else on my 25 and 2025, because I've not actually read a lot of those. And I'm also, I'm going on another tangent, so bear with. I'm also a completionist. Like, there is something in me that's like, I need to read every single book on my 25 and 2025, but I've also kind of accepted at this point, realistically, that's probably not going to happen. If I can read at least half of them, I think will be good, especially because I'm already starting to put together a kind of soft list for 26 and 2026. I will at some point stop doing it so it matches. I feel like 30 in 2030 is I'm not doing 31 in 2031. I can't even say the words. I feel like reverting back to like 20 books I want to read, that's fine. I like 26 and 2026, because I'm reading more than that many books in a year, I think is acceptable. But I also think that the higher the number is, the less likely I am to read them all. So, but it also sounds nice because it's 26 and 2026. So at the minute, I'm doing that. And I am creating a soft list for it, just with keeping an eye on kind of like new releases for 2026 that I'd be interested in putting on there. But I'm reading Babel before then. That is the conclusion of all this yapping. I'm 9 minutes into this clip. Honestly, this was not, I don't know what is wrong with me. It's not even what's wrong with me, but it's really funny. I was thinking about this as well. When I first started filming clips at the beginning of the year, I had to stop and start so often because I just couldn't think of the words to come out my mouth, and I was fumbling over myself. And obviously you get more confident the longer that you talk into a camera, but I just can't stop. I just can't stop talking. So I'm going to stop now, and I'm just going to stop.
It's been days, weeks, months, no, days. 3 days? 2 days? I don't know. I nearly filmed yesterday, and then I was too tired, to be honest. And I don't think I filmed the day before. I don't remember the last time I filmed. Maybe it was Friday? Anyway, I've got 3 book updates for you. I did finish Catabasis, but that's not the first one I finished, so I'll get to that in a minute. In between reading this, I also read a graphic novel that came in from my library. It was This Place Kills Me by Mariko Tamaki. I was like, I knew it in my head, but I couldn't remember. The same author of Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which I read a couple of years ago and I liked. I gave that 5 stars at the time, and I think in retrospect I probably wouldn't rate it as high, but it's just kind of the time when you're reading it. I gave this one 3.5. I did really like it. I specifically really love the art style. Both graphic novels have different artists who have supported the project. I'm just seeing if I can find the artist to shout them out. Nicole Gu. I really like the art style of her art style. I think it was one of the things that made the story. Same with Laura Dean and this one. There is specific colour palettes that they stick to, and so I think that really adds to the atmosphere. The Laura Dean story had a lot of pinks, and this one is a lot of blues and it's a lot darker, and I just think there was some really nice imagery in it. It's a YA graphic novel. It's a mystery novel. Essentially, there's this girl, she goes to this academy. She's fairly new there, and she's a bit of a loner. Her roommate and her aren't exactly best friends either, and there is a play, Romeo and Juliet, and then one of the people in the cast ends up dying, and somehow Abby, the main character, seems to end up getting blamed a little bit because of her past, and there's a lot of kind of suspicion around her specifically. It was a really quick read. It was a graphic novel where I felt like the story had been told as well. I think sometimes that I just struggle with short stories where I feel like I'm not getting enough out of a story, but I do think that there was a pretty solid mystery, the progression of it, the build up to whatever the reveal was. So 3.5 for that. And then I finished Catabasis. I'm giving it a 3. I'm gonna read Babel now. I know that I'm kind of over that hurdle of being afraid to read it. This one is an interesting one because I think, like I said in the beginning, in theory it's something that I should really enjoy. I enjoy academia settings, this mystery of going to hell, but I think that it was a little bit slow, to be honest. I got maybe I was about
how far was I in? I don't remember. I got about halfway, and then like the plot was moving on, but like one of the reviews that I saw says that like hell, you've made hell boring, and it was kind of slow. Like there were stakes, and Alice fights back against those, but like it came a lot closer towards the end. There was quite a bit of a lull in between, and I don't really think that the character development between Alice and Peter was like really happening in those lulls. Their relationship is obviously one where you know that they're going to be involved at some point by the end in some sort of romantic way, and you get the reveal essentially of like their kind of relationship to each other and what their relationship was like in the past, and it kind of like I don't really believe it. Like I don't really feel like it was a really strong romance between the two of them. There was a reveal. There were two kind of like main reveals. There was an Alice reveal and a Peter reveal, and I think the Alice one was kind of expected. Like I kind of thought that was maybe coming, and then it did happen, and you were like, okay, like that makes sense. And then there's also a Peter reveal, and I feel like that one failed a little bit because the kind of theme throughout this is that there are a lot of things that you kind of get told at various points that haven't necessarily been hinted at like along the way. There is Alice's reveal about why she is interested in getting back Grimes makes sense for the most part. You could figure out most of that, but there were a few like specific things linked to that get revealed throughout the story, which kind of just get sprung upon you at random points, which I feel like maybe there could have been more hints along the way to give you a bit more speculation about what to kind of not guess it yourself, because obviously you want it to be a reveal that takes you aback, but it didn't really take me aback, if that makes sense. And then with Peter, this book is so heavy, sorry, I've got to put it down. With Peter, the reveals were like we get basically one Peter chapter where he talks about his reasoning for wanting to go and get Grimes, and like there is a lot about his backstory and his growing up, and there were kind of offhand things throughout which explained the things in his chapter explained his behaviour that Alice had seen and talked about earlier in the book, but there were no hints as to that was the reason for his behaviour. It just seemed like he was quite wishy-washy, and that was kind of it. And so I don't really think that there was enough between the two of them for me to feel really strongly about their relationship, unfortunately. And that's kind of it. It was fine. I am going to read Babel. I don't know if I would buy another R.F. Kuang-Lo. I think I would probably pick them up from the library if I'm going to read any more of her works. But we'll cross that bridge when it gets to it, because I know that the next one she's publishing is more literary, and I'm not like the most literary person. Like I'm a bit selective with my literary fiction. But yeah, that's Catabasis. I read another book. It is Hunger by Choi Jin Young. This one is she also wrote, oh god, what's the book called? It's over here somewhere. To the Warm Horizon, which I read last year and I really liked. I gave that one 4 stars. I gave this one 3 stars. This one follows 2 characters. We have Dam and Gu, and to be blunt, Gu dies. And Dam, it's kind of about Dam reflecting on Dam and Gu reflecting on their time together, and their relationship, and also kind of how you cope when someone dies. It is super short, like 120 pages. That's part of the reason why I picked it up, because I knew I'd be able to push through and read this. I'm now 96 books in to my 100 book goal, so I'm actually hoping, like my tentative goal now for this video is to hit 100, which is almost definitely gonna happen, because I've got another book update. I'm reading another book for another video, and then I'll read 100 books in this video. Anyway, back to the point. I thought this one was okay. I think because it's so short, it focused a lot on their relationship, and like the kind of hook is that Dam is basically gonna eat Gu, but that is not a massive part of the book. It's mostly about their relationship with each other and their past and how they kind of came back to find each other. It's not really about the kind of present day and that decision to decide to eat him. In fact, I would say that maybe makes up less than 5% of the book, which I think would have been more interesting to explore. I would have liked to have seen more of that. But I'm glad to have picked it up. I'm always glad to have read another book that is translated fiction, because that is definitely was a goal of mine this year. And again, you know, it's super short. So if you are looking for a super short book to hit your goal, I recommend it. What are my other book updates? I'm currently reading, I've got my laptop here because I film on my phone, so bear with me. I'm currently reading Several People I Type In by Calvin Kasulki. Oh gosh, there's a lot of C's and K's there, get my words all mumbled together. Which is about this guy named Gerald who gets basically sucked in to his company Slack, and he's trying to make people believe him and no one believes him. I literally have read 80% of that now. I got my car service today, no major issues, woohoo. And I considered filming when I was out, but I don't know if I'm brave enough to do that yet. But I read a little bit while I was waiting because I ended up sitting and waiting for quite a while. So I ended up getting 80% of the way through. And I think I'll finish that today. I think it's because it's all told in like through Slack messages, and so it's really quite easy to read, and it's kind of just like a fun read. I am also then planning on reading The Conductors for the video after this. I'm 30% of the way through that at the moment. I'm kind of slowly making my way through it. I did have it out from the library. I mean, I've still got it out from the library, but I keep being really slow at it, and I've renewed it like twice already at this point. I'm not going to do like major updates about that book in this video because it's going to be in my next video, and I'm about to film a clip for that right now. But yeah, it's going fine so far, and that's all my book updates. I am tired, but I need to go and maybe iron some clothes to put in my suitcase for when I go away. It's Monday now. I go away very, 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 very early hours of Thursday morning. So time is creeping closer. So I need to make sure I've got everything sorted. But I'll check back in with you when I decide what. Before I go, my copy of Among the Bone and Flowers is getting delivered tomorrow, so it's definitely getting here. That's another book that I'm reading. So I'm definitely reading that one. I'm going to finish Several People I Type In. That takes me up to 98. I have one other book on my Kindle that I definitely want to make a start on whilst I'm away, which was be 99. And then, yeah, I think I could do 100 books in this video. That's now my goal. I've got to do that now. So I'll check in. I decided I'm not going to take it away with me because I've fully packed my case now, and I could put it in my carry-on, like my little, well, my case is my carry-on, but like my shoulder bag. But it's only 260 something pages. I can get through that today and tomorrow, so we're reading it right now. That's the plan. I did finish Several People Are Typing. I gave it 3.5. I did quite like it. I thought that for it being told entirely through Slack messages, it was super easy to read. It was an interesting plot. There are a few things I think that maybe didn't quite get touched up on as much. Like there's a character that kind of goes missing, and it's kind of, there's a question mark as to what actually happened with that character. But yeah, I think if you're looking for something short, if you're looking for something that is easy to get through, if you're looking for some kind of tongue-in-cheek commentary on the corporate work life, then I think it's something that you might enjoy. Perhaps most importantly, someone is reversing. I of course started Among the Bone and Flowers. I got 91 pages in yesterday. I could have read more, but I was like too busy playing Stardew Valley and also watching stationery videos, specifically stationery haul videos. And I have, part of that is because I have a organiser coming today where I'm going to organise my pens, my brush pens and my washi tape. And I think I'm going to put it on my bedside table and then I'll tidy it all up. I'm going on holiday tomorrow, so like it's last minute organising my room instead of like, you know, doing literally anything else. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk Among the Bone and Flowers. I really like this world. I think that despite the kind of, so I originally gave Priory 5 stars. I gave A Day of Fallen Night 5 stars, but I think I prefer A Day of Fallen Night to Priory. So I'd probably bump Priory down to 4. I know that people have issues with the pacing and stuff like that, and I 100% get it. I do think that A Day of Fallen Night is better paced in terms of the conflict and stuff that goes on. But obviously it's still like a 700-800 page, well, it's an 800, it's bigger than Priory, so it's like 800 pages. So it makes sense if you don't really want to sit through that if you've already read Priory, because it's still a chunky book. This one is 200 and something pages, about 250. This is the Waterstones edition, so it's got a short bonus story in the back. I think that this also is going to be a good gateway into the world, specifically Priory, because it follows two characters who are mentioned in Priory. My one nitpick is that they both have names that start with M. And so like, even though they are live in very different circumstances, and so you know whose point of view that you're in, they're both their names start with M. So both times I've kind of been like, wait, which name is this again? I'm going to finish it today, and I'll let you know what my thoughts are when I get to the end. I think at the moment the characters are both interesting. Obviously, I mean, to be honest, I read Priory when it came out in paperback, so it would have been 2020, I think. So it's been over 5 years, 5.5 years since I read Priory, and you know, about 3 years since I read A Day for the Night. So I'm not the sort of person who remembers every single thing about books, and so while I know what happened in the books, there are obviously these two characters that are followed in here are mentioned in Priory, but I can only like vaguely remember them. And obviously when Samantha Sherman has talked about this book, she's talked about like the roles that they played in Priory as well. I think it's one of those books where I don't know if I do a reread, unfortunately, because it's so big, and I just don't really do rereads that much at all. I think I'm much more committed to do a reread if I know it's something that I can get through fairly quickly. Like, I reread one of my old childhood favourite series over the past couple of years, which still took me years to do because I kept on putting it off. But the books were young adult books, and they were like 200 to 350 pages max, so I could bang them out in one day if it was a weekend. And so reading a big 800-page book, I feel like I need to dedicate time to it. I think if I do reread it, I'll have to get it digitally, just because it'll be a lot easier for me to kind of progress through it. But yeah, one day maybe. This is a big tangent. I have a couple of things that I need to do today to pick up some last minute bits and bobs before I go, and then I'm getting up at the crack of dawn tomorrow, 4 a.m. to go on my flight. So I've got some time now. I think I'm going to make a start and try and get through a good more chunk of this, so that I can maybe just have a little bit to do when I get back from all my bits later. And then maybe you'll get to see my stationery organisation with me, because I'm about to go get out all my washi tape that I can find, so that it's all nice and ready in a little pile, ready for when I have to put it in my little box. Welcome to my stationery box. I thought I would update you on Among the Burning Flowers, because I finished it whilst I sort out my washi. This is from Notebook Therapy. I have some others somewhere. This one and this one also came from that pack. I decided what I'm going to do is put them in here like this. That's quite a big one, isn't it? I thought maybe it'd be a bit deeper. I'm not going to be able to stand them up, so I'm going to have to just like lower them down. I was thinking about this. I was like, yeah, I'm going to film while I'm doing this so I can multitask. But unfortunately, as we all know, I can't multitask. But I'm going to attempt to. So, Among the Burning Flowers, I gave it a 4. I think that it was a good way for you to get into Priory of the Orange Tree if you haven't already read it, because it definitely gives you world building from exactly just before Priory. I do think that Priory, for the overarching story of like the key main villain, is probably the best one to read, like publishing order wise, but I think that it's probably the weakest publishing wise, so it just kind of depends on what order you want to read them in. I guess. It did also make me want to reread Priory. I know I literally said in the last clip, oh, that's probably not going to happen, I'm not going to reread it because it's so big. I do think that actually it would probably be worth rereading it, because the events of the book happen just before the events of Priory. So I might try and do that. Unlikely though, because as I said, it's a big book. I've started The Clockwork Boys by T. Kingfisher, which I am going to read on the plane. I also downloaded the sequel, so I'm thinking those will be my next 2 books, which takes me up to 100. I'm back from Rome. This is a very quick wrap up, because I want to get this up and uploaded tomorrow, because I start my new job in 2 days, and so I'm not going to have a lot of time to be doing things at the moment. One, Rome was really good. I recommend going if you have never been. 100% highlight for me was the Colosseum. Definitely just awe-inspiring of a building. Definitely recommend. Take your walking shoes. We did like 20,000 steps nearly every single day, so something to bear in mind. 2, I did in fact hit 100 books, which is something to celebrate. I read a graphic novel while I was in Rome called Underwater Welder, I believe, and it follows a man who is soon to become a first-time dad, and he is an underwater welder, and he kind of has some hallucinations of what he's seeing down there, and it's that kind of mixed in with the anxieties around him about to be a dad, and also the experiences he had with his own dad who died kind of like mysteriously, and so it felt quite moving. It was quite like an emotional read in that like it's all kind of told in black and white, so it really kind of felt quite a punchy graphic novel, and I think it's probably sitting at a 4. I did think that it was really well done, and really well rounded for a graphic novel. I then also finished The Clockwork Boys as well by T. Kingfisher. I give it a 3. We follow our main character Slate. She is getting together a band of people as they are off to go hunt down these clockwork boys who are these big mechanical creatures. It's part of the series that kind of encompasses Sword Heart and also the Paladins series as well by T. Kingfisher. So I was reading this, and then I've also got the sequel called The Wonder Engine that I need to read to get a bit more context on the world before I dive into Paladin's Grace. I think that, I mean, it does say that it is split into 2. The book kind of stops when they get to the main place that they need to go, and it is split across 2 books, and so it kind of ends kind of suddenly, and you can definitely tell it's one of T. Kingfisher's earlier works because it does feel character-wise a little bit flatter. Like the characters feel a little bit more like caricatures, a bit more stereotypical than some of the other characters that she's written in later works. I am going to pick up the sequel though because I want more of the lore and context, and I think that it still is a fairly easy read to get through. That's a little bit longer, and to be honest I didn't do much reading on holiday, so I didn't really have a chance to even think about picking up the sequel, so I left it at that. But that was my 100th book of the year, which I finished yesterday. That brings me to the end of this video, the end of my time off, slice of life / holiday / whatever 100th book of the year reading vlog. To end, I got back from holiday to an abundance of packages. I have decided to become a Hobonichi girl next year, so look forward to seeing something related to this in the nearest future. But also the Illumicrate edition of Among the Bone and Flowers arrived, and I just think that this cover is really pretty, and I'm just kind of always going to be in awe of some of these special editions. I'm not a serial special edition collector, but for some books and some series I think it's really kind of meaningful to have them, and I think Priory is kind of one of my favourite series to kind of keep coming back to, so I'm glad to have that special edition. Do I have the Broken Binding one on the way as well? Maybe. But that's it from me, and I'll see you in my next video.